Walker Jones heads up the Grove Collective at Ole Miss, and obviously he's done a hell of a job, and the football team at Ole Miss has done a hell of a job facing a lot of adversity with the Lane Kiffin circus that was, and Pete Golding, now their head coach, has Ole Miss 2 wins away from a national championship, and Walker Jones joins us right now, I believe, from the desert, getting ready for Ole Miss in Miami tomorrow night. So, Walker, I know Tulsa had their portal house that they rented. Is this the NIL Hacienda in the desert out there in Arizona that you're joining us from today?
Yes, I love a little desert weather here in January. It's good to be out here in Scottsdale, and a lot of fun, traveling out here yesterday with the team and just experiencing everything the Fiesta Bowl has to offer, which is a great experience, playing in a national, semifinal. And we're kind of Mobile Command has moved out here and the next couple of days. And, it's a good place to do a little work. That's for sure. Sure beats being at home.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And obviously you're so inside of it with Ole Miss athletics and everything going on with the Grove Collective that I know how good it must feel for you that Ole Miss has gone on this run and beat Georgia the way they did and with everything that's gone down. Do you feel, though, that there's a lot of people rooting for Ole Miss, maybe a lot more than would have otherwise based on how everything went down with Lane Kiffin?
Yeah, I think at first that probably was the case. I think people kind of gravitated towards us because of everything that went down with our head coaching departure and all that when surrounded all that, for the last 5 or 6 weeks. But I think, all that did was really kind of introduce our team and our players to the national, spotlight. And I think people now that was maybe the initial reason, but I think they've gravitated to our players because they realize just how special our players are and what they're playing for, the type of character we have on this team. And so I think that probably has now added even more to it. I think everybody's kind of moved past the coaching thing, at least we have. And really the focus is on the players. And I think everybody has gotten to know our team and know our locker room and our players. And I think that's probably now driving this thing as much as anything else.
So when Lane Kiffin left for LSU, I think a lot of people immediately thought, all right, Trinidad Chambliss, Kawan Lacey, all these great players are just going to follow suit. That's obviously something you've been working to prevent, and you get really good news with Trinidad Chambliss. You hope to get good news with him trying to get the eligibility also, but Lacey as well. How much work went into that? I know this is probably a long-term process as well, but just what are your thoughts on where that stands in terms of you working on roster retention while the team competes for a national title?
Yeah, it's certainly been a hectic, last month, so to speak. I think these are unique times. You've got, a head coaching change. You've got the first portal season open after the House settlement, which has added a lot more complexity and guidelines and a different process that you have to follow. Then you add in the playoff run on top of it. There's no portal window in the spring like there used to be. So, this is kind of the fourth cycle of mine to go through, and this one has been the most challenging for all those variables and all those reasons. But I think we have a great team, and we've proven over the last, 3 years that we know what we're doing. We're really competent. We're efficient. We have a process. And we have a coaching staff and a personnel staff that's the best in the business. And, we all knew the challenge, and we kind of, as former athletes, we kind of embraced the challenge of, it's like the good problem, bad problem. The good problem is we got a lot of really good players. The bad problem is we got a lot of really good players, and everybody wants them. So we had to have a plan and a process and had to be really diligent, but we also had to be respectful to the players. And I think that's the other thing is you want to be careful. You want them to keep the main thing, and that's focus on winning playoff games and trying to win a national championship. So while you're trying to retain players and those types of things, you don't ever want to take that. You don't want that to be the sole focus, and you don't want to take away their mental preparation for being a great football player, a great teammate, and preparing to win a playoff game. And so we had to be sensitive to that. We had to be respectful to our players. And we certainly had to stick to our plan and be really deliberate, methodical in how we approached it. And I think we've seen the last several days that it's worked fairly well because we've been able to retain so many of these great players. And again, that's a tribute to everybody in the building, our administration, the process we have, and the culture that Coach Golding and his staff have created in a short amount of time.
You mentioned the word guidelines there. That's a word that everyone throws around, everyone in the sport. They want guardrails. They want guidelines. They want rules, and they can be able to follow the rules and make sure they're doing things the right way. Help me out, because I was led to believe that now we're going to transition to an era where, there's going to be more of a salary cap, a revenue share, and everything else. And there are guidelines, which you just mentioned. Yet I'm seeing reports that LSU is going to spend $35 million on their roster. That Texas Tech obviously is getting every top target they want. That I think they're probably going above and beyond whatever that cap may be. So can you help explain for our audience what exactly those rules are moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's there's the 20.5 revenue share that the universities are allowed to share with student athletes now. That's a hard cap. And so that can be distributed amongst, your various sports on campus. And then there's the ability to have supplemental third party, call it NIL, name, image, and likeness. And that's really unlimited, but it does have to go through a clearinghouse. It has to be submitted to a system called NIL Go that's then reviewed by the College Sports Commission, the CSC. And they're looking for, pay for play. They're looking for illegitimate NIL, whatever you want to call it, synthetic NIL. And so, it's been one of those learning processes the last 6-7 months, dealing with the clearinghouse and how to get these NIL deals through the system, so you can compensate the players, and the players can be rewarded for the value they've created outside of the rev share cap. And so I think everybody would tell you that it's involved, that it's still a learning process, and we don't have it completely figured out. I don't think the CSC has it completely figured out, and it's going to take some time. But we're learning, every time we submit another agreement, we learn certain things. We've evolved and we've amended our agreements. We've come up with a really good process. And, the thing I hang my hat on here at Ole Miss is we have tremendous alignment between the collective on the NL side and the administration and our athletic department. And we're very aligned. We communicate daily, hourly, and we're on the same page. And, I think you have to have that in today's world, post-house settlement. But yeah, so really it's not when people say, oh, they've got 30 million or 40 million or 50 million, whatever, you could say whatever number you want, but that's not really the most important thing. The most important thing is what's the process to get the money through the system to the players. And I think that's where you're seeing schools separate from other schools, because they figured out a process in these new guidelines to kind of get the money approved and through the system. And if you're efficient at doing that, that's really unlimited as long as you're following those guidelines.
Hey, if you like the channel, become a season ticket holder for Hot Mic by clicking the subscribe button below and join the conversation in the comments section. Agree, disagree, we'll join you there in the chat. Now back to Hot Mic.
How do you feel obviously it's gone well from the win standpoint and the performance standpoint for Ole Miss, but how do you think this great coach swap situation has worked out so far, with guys that are leaving for LSU being allowed to coach throughout this playoff? Has it gone as well as you would have hoped? Has it been more difficult, more trying at times? What have you seen watching this with Coach Golding and the guys coaching for him?
I can't be more proud of a group of men on both sides of this with our coaches. Obviously, it starts with Pete. And, this was not an easy thing. This had never really been done before. A split staff in the middle of a playoff run, head coaching change. I mean, there's really no blueprint for that. And so you just have to kind of figure it out, make the best decision you can. And I give, Keith Carter and Eric Wood and Coach Golding a ton of credit for working through the complexities of that, the uncomfortableness of it. You've got half your staff that's going to be coaching against our arch rival, or coaching for our arch rival next year. And, it's really odd and weird and strange, all whatever adjective you want to use. But again, I just have so much respect for guys like Charlie Weiss, Kevin Smith, all the other coaches that have come back and forth to do a dual job. And they've done it. They've, to no fault of their own, they've been put in this position, and they have coached their tail off for these players and for this program. And coaches on both sides of this have been mature and have handled it as well as you can handle it. I mean, I think there's no perfect way to handle it, but I'm just very proud of those guys. I was telling Coach Weiss yesterday on the plane coming out here just how much I appreciate, as not the guy running the collective, but as a former player, an alumni here at Ole Miss, how much I appreciate him and the others for pulling double duty like they have. And they have coached their tail off, man. They want to win for these players. Regardless of what the next stage looks like for them, they want to win for these players. And again, I think, that tells you the type of guys, kind of men they are. And it also tells you what kind of guy Pete Golding is to work with those guys in a very tough situation that they've been put in.
So the Damon Williams situation in Washington, I'm sure you've seen the news with that. Being someone in a position you're in at Ole Miss, would you handle it in a similar fashion if the same situation happened to you, where you go and try to recoup that money if a contract is signed? Because it certainly looks like Washington, with their attorneys, is going to try to make that contract binding that was just signed with Damon Williams.
Yeah, that's an interesting situation. Unfortunately, I think all of us in this business probably knew that was going to happen at some point. And quite frankly, I'm surprised it hadn't happened more. And I don't know all the specifics on it. I don't know, exactly what all's going on. I've read, some of the stuff, and I think this is a prime example of how we've got to get the adults back in the room and have some real conversations about the makeup of contracting with these student athletes, what's going to be binding. We're moving closer and closer towards that professional sports world in college athletics, and we're kind of caught in this in-between no man's land from a contracting standpoint, that these deals are, you want them to be binding, you want them to be ironclad, but how are they really? Can you challenge non-competes and liquidated damages and buyouts and all those types of things? And it makes it tough because, when a player, when you sign a player, you kind of move on and go fill a new need, and you kind of check the box with that player and you move on. And then all of a sudden that player ends up leaving. Well, now he's put that program in a really big bind. But again, sometimes you can't blame the players because, they're trying to get in the best situation they can. And they have a chance to be compensated at a high level. And I think that's just where we've got to have a real conversation at some point about, whether it's collective bargaining, whether it's, an agent registry, some sort of agent guidelines, some sort of tampering guidelines, somehow, some way. We don't have those things now. And unfortunately, until we have those tough conversations and insert some real common sense reform, like the professional leagues have done, then we're going to continue to see this pop up. And I think it's just unfortunate for everybody. And I hope it works itself out. I hope he's a fine player, and whatever he ends up doing, I wish him the best.
Well, and you seem like a pretty even-keeled guy and don't let a lot get to you. But the human nature in me, I would be angry, right? If you're the one that's negotiated it and worked with it and everything else, and every single person in your role or coach or the administration of a school, they've dealt with this, where a guy's there for a year and then leaves or doesn't get there at all. Like, how do you cope with that? How do you handle it? Do you just move on to the next thing, or is there ever a natural response of, yeah, I'm pissed off?
Yeah, look, I think I learned early on in this, as many people have, that you can't wear your emotions on your sleeve, and you can't get too, you can't get too upset with the ebbs and flows of the transfer portal and NIL, because there's just so much uncertainty, so much ambiguity. And I think you have to, again, I think I learned this after the first year. Like, after you get through with the portal, whether we're building a basketball team or a baseball team or a football team, whatever sport that I'm working on, that coach and I kind of talk, and we all kind of say, like, when we look back at this roster, we're going to feel really good about 60 or 70%, 60 or 70% of it. We're probably going to feel okay about 10% of it. We're probably going to feel bad about the other 10 or 15% of it. And you have to just be okay with knowing that there's going to be some mistakes made. And because it's just too challenging and it's such a moving target to be perfect in this world. And you have to be okay with knowing that you're not going to get every player. You're not going to retain every player. But the more you dwell on that and worry about it and beat yourself up over it, there's more guys just passing right by you. And you don't have time. This is not for the faint of heart. And you got to take defeat and move on and have a short memory. And I think that's what I've tried to do, is have a short memory. Don't take it personal when a 19, 20-year-old player decides to make a decision that you don't agree with. Because when I was 19 or 20, I felt a lot differently than I do now. And you just have to accept that.
So I think I speak for a lot of people when I say congrats on the success. It's been fun to watch with Ole Miss in these 2 wins and what was a classic quarterfinal game against Georgia. Maybe we get another one of those tomorrow night, your game against Miami. Congrats on everything. Appreciate the time for hopping on with us and talking through the business of all of it.
You bet. Always a pleasure coming on. Hotty toddy. It's going to be a good one tomorrow night.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Walker Jones, the Grove Collective, joining us from the desert, getting ready for that big game against the Miami Hurricanes tomorrow night.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe to Outkick Hot Mic.
Daily content and more at Outkick Hot Mic on YouTube.